McDonald's colors today. Because McDonald's has one of the best systems, if not the best system in the restaurant, that a 5-year-old can run, right? So what we're going through is pretty much dummy proof. If you just use it, you'll be able to close. If you just put the words in the right order, you'll be able to close, guys. Even if you don't know what you're talking about, but you should know what you're talking about, right? So the first thing we're gonna go over, like Tia mentioned, is the theory. So the theory of decreasing responsibility. If you don't know what it is, back in the day, Art Williams, our founder, he used to call this the napkin presentation. Because all he would do is literally take a napkin out and he would draw these 2 lines that you see here. And this is embedded in your presentation. Tia did say it was kind of wonky. Oh, was that me or you? So you guys have all seen this in the presentation, true? Right? So this used to be the only presentation he used back in the day. Now with technology and everything, things got more complicated and complex. But if you use this the right way, they will understand why they don't need life insurance their whole life. And they'll understand why there is a case where they really need insurance. I like to say, you're like a lawyer in the field, right? Lawyers, they build a case, right, so that they can win that case. Your job is to build a case of why they need the coverage. And this only works if they're in the qualified market. So if you go to if I go to the next page, okay? So how do we introduce the theory? Just like Beyonce transitions from song to song, like a pro, right? You have to transition slide to slide like a pro. So the transition questions start with getting that dollar commitment and making sure they're willing to put aside money for this plan that is important for them, their kids, which is better than a bag of chips that's not as important. Then you ask them, has anyone ever taught you, by the way, how to calculate the coverage you need? No? Okay. So this is how we help you calculate the coverage. So can you guys see this? Okay. So follow the arrows that I'm talking about. Actually, I should probably draw it here. Whoops. So typically in the early days, most people have young kids, high debt, and relatively little to no money saved, right? Is that true, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Yes. Somebody say yes.
Yes.
So, and while I'm doing this, it's very important as you are planning to go on more appointments than less, because you guys want more appointments, not less, right? You're not going to remember everybody's scenario by heart, and those of you guys who think you're mentally strong enough to remember everybody's notes, you're not going to do it. So get a notebook and make sure you have a notebook out so you can write down the numbers to this client, because you may not close on the first appointment. Sometimes you may have to do a carryback. And if you have 8 carrybacks in the week, how do you know how much debt everybody has individually versus if they care about college versus if, and so on. So in the early years, most people typically have young kids, high debt, and little to no money saved, right? Yes. Right. So how much typically would you say you have saved up? And this is me writing in my notebook, right? Saved up between 401ks, retirement plans, checking, savings account, just hard cash that will go to your family. Let's say Ricky and his wife, right, say what? Roughly how much would you say?
Like 2,000.
Okay, so about 2,000, okay? And I'm not gonna flinch and say you only have 2,000. That's a bad people skill, guys, okay? Do not say that. Secondly, if God forbid something happened to you, would you want to make sure your children, by the way, what are your children's names again?
Aiden and Sahali.
Okay. So I'm gonna write down Aiden and Sahali on my notebook. Why? Because when you use people's names, they start getting really giddy and they start going through this whole happy phase, right? You bring the walls down. Like, Tia, if God forbid something happened to you tomorrow, would you want to make sure your children, by the way, what are your children's names again?
Liam, Lily, and Noah.
And she's always smiling when she says their names, right? We want to make sure we get them in a mood where they're really positive. So I'm going to check for education. Next, if God forbid something happened to you tomorrow, would you want to make sure all your debts are paid off so that Aiden and Sahali don't have to be responsible for it or your spouse doesn't?
Yes.
Yes? And how much debt would you say you have between mortgages, credit cards, personal loans, car notes, just anything, rough balance?
About 10,000.
10,000? Okay. All right. And what are your bills per month roughly? Just
Around 3,000.
about 3,000? Okay. So let me magnify this for you. So you guys are following here, right? You could, when we had these questions embedded to match the theory, and I didn't memorize them at first, and this is back in 2020 when we, edited the presentation to be more interactive. I had to learn these questions, and the cool part is while you're on Zoom, you can just have your phone in front of you or notes in front of you and read the questions off, right?
Right.
You don't have to be a pro yet, but just have the questions in front of you and put yourself in a position where you're winning. So, let me magnify what you just shared. So what I do here is, remember, people learn visually, right? So I pull out a calculator on the Zoom share on purpose because I want them to see that they don't have money to last their family. So if you follow the questions, you'll see I'm asking, so let me magnify what you just shared. Pause the calculator. So we have about $2,000 saved. They see 2,000. You have about $10,000 of debt. Is that right? Right? And you want to make sure Aiden and Sahala's education is taken care of. But you also have $3,000 a month of bills that need to be paid, no matter what, right? I know this is a silly question, but if something did happen to you, how long would $2,000 of savings last your family? And this is where I put the $2,000 back on the screen. And if Yesenia is the right mother for her kids, right? And she sees, holy crap, I really only have 2,000 and I have 3 kids. What do you think is going through her mind, Before I even say anything. She's going to be like, holy crap, I really need to do something about this. So followed by the next question, can you see why you need a lot of coverage in the beginning? So if I ask Yesenia, if something God forbid happened to you, how long would, I know this is a silly question, but how long would 2,000 savings even last your kids?
Not even a month.
Can you see why you need a lot of coverage in the beginning?
Yes.
So that's where I point to the top right here, right? Where we need a lot of insurance. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Cool. But in the later years, if you make it long enough, your children are grown, you have little to no debt, and your mortgage is paid, if not almost paid, right? And this time, if you want to retire, you're going to need a lot of what? Now, I know some people don't, it's a common sense is supposed to be a thing, right? But some people don't have common sense. Common sense is not so common. So that's why in the Zoom, I go like this to the client, right? And you know who I learned that from? Shaq, right? Everything I do here is because I've always shown up to trainings and I learned every single piece of the puzzle in the presentation. So as important as life insurance is, you can't live off life insurance, can you, Ricky? So we want to make sure we protect your family from you dying too soon, but from you from living too long. We don't know what's going to happen first, so we have to prepare for both. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Now, if something happened to you tomorrow, if something happened to your car tomorrow, you would want to replace all of it, wouldn't you?
Yes.
If something happened to your home, you would want to replace all of that too, right?
Yes.
But if something happened to you, how much of your income would you want Aiden and Sahali to still have?
All of it.
All of it. And that's always, as soon as you go through those questions, which actually I got from Shondell back in 2020, right? They will always say all of it. They will always say all of it. Maybe a percentage at most, but the right client will say all of it. So since we'll be replacing all of your income, how much do you feel you could comfortably set aside? And sometimes I ask, how much would you be willing to set aside to help to put towards this on a monthly basis to make sure your family is properly protected? And before you answer, Mr. and Mrs. Client, 70 to 100 a month, 100 to 150 a month, or 150 to 200 a month. Now, you can work with your client accordingly, right? If I have a higher caliber client, I'm not going to start with 70 to 100. If I have like a more older client, like in their 45 to like 55, I'm probably going to shoot for 150 to 200, right? If I know they save a lot of money, that's gonna be a little bit more of a different client I'm dealing with, so we have to figure out if they're saving they're just not spending a lot of money. These are cues that you have to look through in the presentation before you get here. But by the time you get to the theory and you start asking these questions, they're already ready to go, really, right? They're not gonna entertain this conversation if they're not interested. So 70 to 100 a month, 100 to 150, or 150 to 200 a month. 70 to 100, okay? So in order for, so if I put together a quote that, plan that fits between 70 to 100 a month, that would be comfortable for you? Okay, perfect. So why do you guys think I have to confirm that again? Say, some people just say a number because it sounds good, but if you confirm it again, they can't fight against that later, right? You just confirm it again just to tie a bow on it, wrap it up, right? And now we can open up the gift later when bacon brownie comes in. So, so in order for me to give you an accurate quote, I just need to ask you a few questions. Let's start with, what's your date of birth?
January 3rd, 2003.
Okay, January 3rd. Now, sometimes I might say, oh my gosh, you have like Blue Ivy's birthday, right? So, if they say March 22nd, I'm like, oh my god, my birthday is March 26th, you're an Aries, right? And they'll be like, oh my gosh, me too. Those are the me too's that I'm looking for, right? It just breaks the ice a little bit. You guys don't have to be into zodiac signs. I think it's great. Date of birth, okay. What did you say?
January 3rd, 2003.
January 3rd, 2003. And do you have any significant health history like cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, cholesterol? No? Any medications you take at all for high blood pressure, diabetes? What about anxiety, depression? Anything in the last 10 years at all?
Nope.
Okay. Have you had to meet with a therapist, psychologist?
No.
I don't know. Okay. Any DUIs, DWIs in the last 3 years?
Nope.
Okay. And what's your height and weight?
5'7", 160 pounds.
Okay, so let's pause here. Why do you want to do this? Because sometimes, most, I would say for my market, I've seen a lot more CODs, which are cash on delivery, where you have to submit the application without money, so that we can wait for underwriting to do their job to see if this client will get approved later. Because people are having a lot more health issues than normal. Have you guys seen that in the field? Right? But there are also a good number of people, like everybody Yesenia is taking me on except for one person. Everybody has done business. 100% of our appointments have done business. 100% of our appointments, to be fair, are in person as well. And 100% of our appointments are hot market. 100% of our appointments have been instantly approved except for just one person, right? And so once I get all of that, the reason why is because I want to know if I'm going for a COD or not. If I'm going for a COD and I know that we're not going to even have to submit an application with money, I'm just going to do the application. Why am I doing a carryback for the second appointment, right? So you want to be smart with your time and just get it through, because by the time the client is done thinking about things, they may have been declined already, right? Then now they have nothing to think about. So why were we waiting 2 weeks just to get declined to think about something we can't even think about, right? Or maybe they have a different quote that came out, they applied for 100 a month, now it's 200 a month because of their health record. Maybe they lied to you, right? And they said they didn't have certain things going on, but the medical record said so, right? And you have to have that conversation with them. So, okay, great, Ricky, I'm gonna crunch some numbers for you, and now this is where I transition into referrals. We're not gonna do that today, but that's where I have the trainee ask for referrals. So once we collect that, what I'm doing is I'm going into a quoting process. So I'm gonna show you what my quote looks like so that you guys can use this. And what I'm going to teach you is how to just be professional with it, because you can do what some people do and start scrabbling on a whiteboard, right? The quotes, and now the client can hardly read your handwriting, okay? Or you can put it on what it looks like a professional template that you can make your own, right? Or you can take mine and copy mine. So I'm actually gonna send this to Thomas so he can share it. Sorry, Thomas, I didn't send it to you at first. Okay, perfect. So there is an art to quoting, guys, so while Thomas pulls that up, get the dollar commitment first before you quote. If a client says, these are things to look out for. Do not, if I could give you any do nots, right? do not give a client a quote until you know what their budget is. I've had some clients that said, oh, I just wanna know what I would get for what. So just give me a quote for like $1 million. Okay, well, if it's $1,000 a month, can you afford that? Oh, no, not at all. So I'm not gonna give you that quote. What is your budget, right? You know, 200, 300, 100, 150, right? Just, you know, you can smile with them by the time you already built your rapport. So this is the quoting template that I use. So this is on Google Docs, guys. Every single person should have access to Google Docs. And if you don't, right, what's the best day to get started? When? Today, right? So use Google Docs, and I'm not gonna give you step by step how to do this. There's buttons, and did you know that if you just click a button, it does something, right? So just click the button, and it'll tell you how to create the table. So what I do is I do 3 quotes, as you can see. I didn't put the dollar signs here, I forgot to, but I usually start with $300,000 first if I know that it's gonna be in their budget. And while I'm quoting, do not share your screen while you're running the quotes, okay? You wanna let the client focus on the training while they're asking for referrals. And in that 3 to 4 minute period of them asking for referrals, or 2 minute period, you should be filling this one out. So, Thomas, can you pull up the quick quote really quick? So where did the numbers come from before I fill this out? I use quick quote on POL. So if you go on Primerica Online on your desktop, and you click on Primerica app at the very top, I know it's tiny, right? But you guys can see it is in blue. And then, once you get to the Primerica app, what you're gonna do is go on the left side of the screen, and you're gonna scroll down and go to Quick Quote. Simple. You can't have access to this until you're licensed, so your trainer will have to do it for you once you're officially appointed. But if I like to personally do Quick Quote for a contact, just because I can save their birthday in and follow up later, just in case of anything. But let's just say that we're doing a quote for a 40-year-old female, right? Non-tobacco, and you see, it automatically goes to 35 years. You wanna give somebody the longest term that you can give them, because you just don't know what can happen in between. They might dip into their money, you know, they might have a new baby, I don't know, they might buy a new house, they're gonna need coverage a little bit longer than normal. But in that time frame, it gives you time to actually work with them in their investments. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So typically for most clients in our market, the most they can apply for without a medical test, not medical questions. Everybody has to answer medical questions. But you can avoid a medical test called a paramed if you apply for 300,000 or less. So I always shoot for 300,000 to maximize the coverage in case it's in their budget. So, go down. Waiver, so I always add waiver premium, that's up to you guys. The younger the client, the less waiver premium will be extra. And child rider, I add 10,000 normally, but you guys can add more at your discretion, depending on the budget. Okay, so at the bottom, so what we're seeing is 300,000, 10,000 each child, and that's $107 a month. So Ricky said his budget was 70 to 100. Guess what? I'm not gonna quote him for 300,000. You know, I'm probably gonna quote him for 250,000. Go to 250. Okay, so it's 91. So I might shoot for 91. So I'll go 250, 200, and 150,000. But let's say Ricky said his budget was, for the sake of what's on my screen, right? Let's say his budget was 100 to 150, okay? So the quotes are 107, 91, and then what's 200,000? 87, so 107, 91, and 87. So let's go to the quick quote, the quote template. Thank you, Thomas. So once I get to the quotes, you see the numbers at the bottom where the green color is. I like to color coordinate things because it's just easier for the clients to read, honestly. If it's a whole bunch of black numbers or one color numbers, it's just too much going on, right? So once I fill this out, I'll present it in this such. So Ricky, thank you so much for those instructions for Yesenia. I have some numbers for you to look at. Boom, right? So let's focus on one thing at a time. Number one, so the first quote, these are each 35-year level plans, because it gives me enough time for me to work with you to save your money over time, okay? It doesn't mean you have to wait 35 years to touch your money, it just gives me time. Sounds good, Ricky? So the first quote is $300,000 on you, 70% terminal illness, which means, and I pull out a calculator, I calculate what 70% of 300,000 is. You guys know what that is? It's 210,000. Okay, so 210,000 on the calculator. If God forbid you have cancer or another terminal illness, and you need to pull out money, 210,000 is what you have access to. Hopefully you don't need that, but sometimes, again, the difference between living and dying is money, isn't it? Second waiver premium, if you are disabled for 6 months or longer, you can stop paying, and we can keep your coverage. So far, so good. And 10,000 each child, up to 9 children. Upon request more, be my guest if you'd like more than 2 children, Ricky. Okay? I have clients with 11 each, so you're a little bit behind, and the client will laugh, right? So that quote is about $107 a month. If you just invest $50 a month outside of that, over the next 35 years, if you don't add any more money aside on that, then you will have at least $261,000 tax-free at 12%. And that's in a Roth IRA. But if we go to the next quote, $250,000 with everything else being equal. Hey guys. Yeah. $250,000 with everything else being equal is $91. But if the bare minimum and most responsible I feel comfortable with you having, because you do have Sahali and Aiden to take care of, right? And you're a single dad, right, Ricky? It's $200,000 on you, that's $87 a month. As you can see, this is my go-to to transition into underwriting, which Sheila is gonna do for us. My go-to, if you could go back to the presentation, Thomas, please. And go to slide number 6. Yeah, actually I can do it. My go-to transition into getting the application and explaining underwriting. You'll pull it up and send it to there, but it's on slide number 6, Thomas. So as you can see, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I did not change the numbers for the investments because you can always add more savings or money to your investments, but you cannot always get more life insurance. Do you know why? And they'll say, no, why? Remind me, right? You know, life insurance is one of those things that fortunately and unfortunately pay out when you pass away. And that only has to happen one time, right? And that risk outside of random accidents is based on 2 factors, your age and your health. Today, we are the youngest and the healthiest we'll ever be. So, right here. Today, we're the youngest and the healthiest we'll ever be. So, for that reason, we always recommend you apply for the most in your budget. That way, if something does change, you'll have something versus nothing. Does that make sense? So, which one do you feel most comfortable protecting your family with? $300,000, $250,000, or $200,000? And the client will pick. Oh, I think I can try for $300,000. Okay. And then you go through explaining how the process works and what is going to happen or could happen with the application. So without further ado, I get to bring up the #1 producer in here, and that is Sheila Bustamante.